Welcome to another episode of the Bald Avenger Show. I am Jason Cisneros, also known as the Bald Avenger, the purveyor of all things common sense, the king of the Misfit Nation, the tattooed guru. You got it. Okay. And a legend in my own mind. That's right, baby. That's right. So everybody that's watching it on Emily's page, just a little, because I know we have people that are like, I think he might be a little bit arrogant or whatever. I say legend in my own mind, not legend to the rest of the world. But why? My question is always, why are you not a legend in your own mind? That's all I'm saying. Humility is great. I have a lot of it. I think I might be the most humble person on the face of the planet. Am I sounding a little bit? Hashtag humble brag. So anyway, welcome to the show tonight. This is going to be, I don't know, it was kind of last minute thrown together. I've got some things I want to talk about, but also wanted to introduce the beautiful and talented and brilliant Emily Seelman, and give her a little opportunity to talk about her company, which is kicking ass and taking names, and Tetra Growth Systems, which I know that you have a couple of primary, you have some other secondary things that you do with your company, but you are and have been on the front lines of the, can we say marijuana on this, or do they boot us off? Like,
no, but I'd say cannabis, because marijuana is kind of not even used anymore.
Cannabis space and what she does. There's a lot of things she does, and I want to let her explain a little bit about what she does. But at the end of the day, if somebody's looking in any new states that are opening up that want to get licenses, her company and the women that are on her team, I'm telling you, all women, right? It's an all women owned company. And I mean, you own the company, but there's all women that are surrounding you, all of your executives, all of the people on the front line, and very, very powerful team of women. And you help people get licenses where it's difficult. A lot of times people think they can do it on their own. And it's, you know, it's like one of those things, right? You only know what you don't know what you don't know. And having Emily's company come in and coach you through that process puts you on a much higher level of being able to get a license when it's highly competitive, right? Highly competitive, very confusing. And your company does all that. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your company and what you do, and talk to the people.
Okay. If I look distracted, it's because the mosquito is literally circling me. So,
by the way, just like the coronavirus, it's not going to kill you. So
it could, because it's about the size of my head, and it might. So it looks like a banana spider with wings. And
unless we see it, unless it goes on video, it's not real. No.
You'll see it. It's about to like overwhelm the camera. It's flying. It's hovering. It's
okay.
See the reflection of your bald head.
Mm-hmm.
But I love it. So my company, I mean, you explained it well, but we primarily help people with their applications for cannabis licenses. So if someone wants to cultivate marijuana, sell, open a dispensary and sell cannabis, or manufacture it, extract it, infuse it, you need licenses for all of those things with your state. It's still federally illegal, but states are opening up to it. And that's when their application processes open up. So, so yeah, we help them do that. They're usually a, 2 to 6 month process to get those done. And they're really, really competitive. So to put it into perspective, Illinois is open right now. They had a dispensary round open a couple months ago, and there were 75 licenses being handed out. We don't know until May if who wins, but 75 licenses being handed out for dispensary permits, and there were 700 applicants submitting 4,000 applications. So it is hyper competitive. It costs a lot. It's a lot of focus, a lot of, it's like a full-time job for people who are applying. So see, my cat even sees the mosquito, so it's real. But yeah, that's
tell everybody that his name is Blue. It's okay. It's Blue.
My cat's name is Blue because her eyes are blue. And it's because I couldn't get a dog that I have a cat. So
it is what it is.
But that's my company primarily, and of course we have other ancillary pieces of the cannabis space that we operate in. But primarily, I mean, that's the most competitive area. So it's the way I got started into the industry when I was working at the law firm that I used to work at, and I love it.
Awesome. So I have a whole bunch of stuff that I wanted to talk about tonight, but one of the things I want everybody to know and understand is how proud of you I am. And I know people that know you well, your friends, your family, all of those people are really, really proud of you because you've come from a humble beginning, and you went and you put yourself through law school. You became an attorney, and did really well, excelled at that, and then decided, and this is kind of why I love your story, because a lot of people, they go into things that they think are going to be solid, right? Things that are going to be predictable, things that, like, they go get an education for something that maybe a member of their family thought they should, or even ourselves, we think that this is going to be the thing that's going to be solid. It's going to be it's going to add certainty to my life. It's going to be the thing that will, as everybody else is kind of scrambling around, I'm going to have something to hold on to, right? And you looked at that life, and you spent that life, and you were doing the lawyer thing, and you're brilliant, and you did a great job at it, and you started looking around going, I don't know if this is the life that I want, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so talk a little bit about that transition, because here's why I want to have this conversation tonight in the midst of all of the stuff that we're going through, is that people have an opportunity right now to maybe step out from what their day-to-day is. I had a really great conversation with Casey today about the same thing. She's been doing what she's doing for 20 years, and she loves it. She's very, very good at it, but she feels like there's something more for her. So talk a little bit about your psychology as you were going through that transition, because again, for you to step away from being an attorney and go into the world of being an entrepreneur and starting your own business, that is a huge leap that is the rest of the world would look at as strange.
Dumb. Yeah. Which is more of a, yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's true. I personally wanted to be a lawyer because I saw the certainty that came from it, right? You know what kind of wages you're going to make. You know, if you succeed, if you push yourself in law school and you're competitive enough, you will, gain a position in a really nice law firm. And that's exactly what I set out to do. And I did it. And then I got there, and literally I was like, my dream is to, like, live in the city, work in the city, be a city girl, and I was in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania at the time. And that's what I did. And I remember, looking at my office, and it had these beautiful, huge windows, and I was overlooking the city, and I'm like, I got what I wanted. And why am I sick to my stomach? And every day going up in the elevator, I was just sick to my, and I'm sure so many people feel that on Sunday nights, where your stomach drops and you're like, oh my gosh, I have to work tomorrow. I don't want to do this. And I felt guilty at first, maybe not guilty, but I was questioning why I was feeling that way, because I was making so much money. I accomplished what I had set out to do. I loved the firm I worked at. The people I worked with were amazing. I loved being an attorney and all the challenges that it came with. And I just wasn't happy. I knew it wasn't for me. And there were just so many things that I wanted to own my own company. I knew I had the work ethic to do it. I could work smart. And so I kind of walked away from all of it. And I stayed long enough to acquire the knowledge that I needed to. And then I left. And that was kind of that moment where, my family, who was just trying to support me in everything, saying, are you sure this is the right decision? Are you sure you're not being short-sighted? And I wasn't really sure, but I had gone to a Tony Robbins event, and I just remember it being so in my heart and out of my head. And I can overthink something until I completely kill it 7 times over. And when I went to that Tony Robbins event, that's when I knew this is the right decision for me. And I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to do it because I have it's my purpose. And I want to be able to help people through my own company. I want to be able to make as much money as I earn. And so that's kind of how the process started. And now I'm here.
What was it? Because I met you at that event, right?
You did meet me at that event. Yeah.
Yeah, I met you at that event, and you were there with your twin sister. You're twins. You guys have a channel on Instagram, and you can talk a little bit about that as well. But so you're a twin. I met you there, and so what was it? What was the shift like? Because I've been to I don't know 26 or 27 UPWs, and it was just like a last minute thing, right? I was there actually as Tony's guest, me and some other people that had gone undercover with him to go do a rescue. And he wanted us all there. And I was only there for one day because I've been 26 times. And I got some really cool distinctions after being there for 26 times. Now coming the first time that I was ever there as a guest, right? And I got some really cool distinctions from that. But because again, to say I went to a Tony Robbins event and I decided I was going to become an entrepreneur, what was it that shifted for you? What were those distinctions?
Well, I think there were little things that happened over time where I consistently had that feeling of, I'm sick to my stomach going to work, doing this job every single day. And I remember constantly facing this feeling of like despair when I would think, is this what I'm going to be doing in 20 years, 30, 40 years? And I was watching the partners, and they're very successful, very kind, but I saw it as just not specifically in my firm, but across the spectrum, they're equally miserable as associate attorneys. So we were all miserable. So I thought, am I still going to be miserable in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years? And I just realized I didn't want to do it. And I hated the fact that I had to show up to work at a certain time and leave at a certain time. Because if I wanted to work 14 hours in a day, I wanted to do that. And I wanted that to be reflected in my pay scale. I knew how hard I could work. And so it was just over time, I kept thinking, if I own my own company, I could earn that money. I could earn that lifestyle. I could be happy. I could find the life kind of intersection between work and my life that I want to. I want to have a life by design. So it just kept pinging in my mind. And I was listening to podcasts like Amy Frisella and Tony Robbins and Ed Milet, and they'd all built these lives by design. And so by the time I had gotten to
UPW, the Bald Avenger.
Bald Avenger did not exist at that time. That's why
it didn't actually. You're right.
Yeah,
You're right.
It didn't. Now it's part of my routine because I have my morning podcast routine, and you were part of that for a reason. But at that time, by the time I got to UPW, I remember my mom always telling me, it's the perfect combination if you are lucky enough to find a job you have a passion for that also pays the bills. And I knew I had a job that paid the bills, but not what I had that passion for. So it just it seemed to me that I just needed to keep shifting the type of job I wanted until I could create the one I really dreamed of. So that's kind of, it just all kind of culminated at UPW, where I was around like-minded people, a bunch of people who had to make that decision, and they made that jump and they burned the boats. And I remember my sister and I and her husband also came along with us, and we all said, we are going to burn the boats. Don't look back. So I hesitated. I hesitated for a few more months. And then one day, I had met someone at UPW who was also in a job he didn't want to be in anymore. We actually went to college together, found each other in Los Angeles at that UPW. And we both said, the day we put in our 2 weeks, we're going to take a shot. We're going to FaceTime each other and just take a shot and congratulate each other. And we did. We both put in our 2 weeks, called each other, and took a drink.
That's cool. So obviously, after you decide to make this life-changing switch, everything went perfectly.
No.
First try.
No, it was so bad. It was so bad for so long. It was so bad. But every day I kept thinking, just 2 millimeters more, just 2 millimeters more. And so any hardship I went through, and a good friend of mine and a colleague in the cannabis industry, Abigail Knapp, we'd known each other since we were like 6 years old. So we became very close through this whole process because we were both starting into our companies at the same time. And we would pray for each other, and we'd give each other words of encouragement. And I'd be calling you crying, you'd be giving me words of encouragement. But it kept coming back to what would happen? How would you react differently right now if you knew that your goal was 2 millimeters away? And that's what I kept saying every single day.
Through that time, you had some things that didn't work out with different you tried multiple times and you had challenges, right? Mm-hmm. And so I want to advance it just a little bit because it's such a great story and such a great reflection on who you are as a human being. Aside from our relationship, what I watched was somebody who because I have the ability to be able to help, I have the ability to be able to support, and I offered that along the way, and you rejected it every single time. And that made me, I mean, you know, obviously, I mean, it's been 3 years since we've known each other, and that just made me admire you more and more along the way. And you decided, but I need to learn about how I do this thing called business, because there's one thing to learn to be an attorney, and this goes for everybody, right? This goes for everybody, no matter whatever it is that you do, you're probably really, really good at it. Now it's how you do what you do that makes the difference. And did I lose you?
I'm here. You're freezing up a little bit, but I hear you.
Oh, okay. Oh, got it. I think it was because my internet was unstable. So probably coronavirus. But anyway, so can you hear me now?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know? Okay, good. So anyway, so along that pattern along that path, I got to observe it from almost like an outside standpoint, even though I was in it with you. And one of the things that you've always been really adamant about is about learning, right? You decided you wanted to take the 12-week course, and you wanted to learn about how to build a business. And there was a time that you threw yourself into that while you were building your business. Talk a little bit about that period of time.
So yeah, well, I mean, for starters, I appreciate every attempt that you made to support me. I mean, that meant the world to me. And I don't want to cry, so I'm not going to, because this is not really a thing to cry over, but for some reason I want to cry. But yeah, you did. You wanted to support me every step of the way. And I just remember struggling so hard. And you were just like, let me pay your rent. Let me pay your bills, which meant everything to me. But I just I couldn't do that, you know? So it was my thing. And I don't know why I'm crying about it, but I think it's the mosquitoes here. I thought my cat killed the mosquito. But yeah, so yeah, I mean, you were so amazing through that. So I just want to acknowledge that you were breaking for me. So I just appreciate that. And so I guess I got to this place where I was like, if I can't do this on my own, I'll never be okay with that in my heart. So I wanted you to support me, and I love that you were there for me emotionally, but I had to win. And this was the only way I could. So I did. So I took the 12-week course, and it was like life-changing for me, because it was hard. It was hard work, but it was the right hard work, like you said. And I listened to.
And by the way, I offered to give you the 12-week course, right? I offered to give you the growth program, you know, and you refused. Like you said, I'm going to pay for it, because, and I want, and that's so amazing to me, again, because there's all the things that, again, I wanted to just support, because I love you and I care about you, and I wanted to support you as you're going through this stuff. And at the end of the day, you wouldn't even let me give you the 12-week course. And you said something during that time. You said, look, if I pay nothing for it, that's the value that I'm going to put into it.
And I truly believe that. And you're right. And I ended up putting it on like credit cards or something, which like totally goes against my Dave Ramsey upbringing. But I needed to, and I knew the expense I would put into it the output would be phenomenal. So I think it's kind of fitting. I wore this shirt. It says die first, then quit. And that's literally like my life motto. But and that's how your life motto is too. But yeah, so that's kind of like the effort I put into this 12-week course. I knew if I paid for it, I would put in the time and effort well beyond what I paid. And that you guys priced that way too low. I mean, that thing is what made me successful. I owe my life to it, really. But yeah, I listened to that multiple times, and then I ended up getting a job working overnight at a gym, and like maintenance, like scrubbing floors and stuff. And I was minimum wage. So I'm like, I'm an attorney, should be making attorney wages, and I'm here mopping men's bathrooms, 3 a.m.
Cleaning toilets. Yeah.
Yeah. And I got my routine down, and I was just like, listen, this is part of the game. I'm going to look back on this, and I'm going to be so happy and proud of myself that I did this. And I would work overnight, and I'd listen to the 12-week podcast. Once around like midnight, people would stop showing up, and I'd work from midnight to 4 a.m. I'd be hitting the bathrooms and scrubbing them and listening to the 12-week course. And it was like the best thing, because I would just soak it all in. And then when you tell us to read certain books, I get the books online or whatever on the app, and I'd listen to them. And that was the best. And I just remember thinking, this is the 2 millimeters. You have to push, because the winners push through this stuff. They don't quit. And so I did. I just shut my mind off, you know, of the noise. And I just said, your goal is to win. Do anything you need to win. So I'd work overnight at the gym, listen to the 12-week course.
Well, you weren't, I mean, again, you're being a little bit like you were working overnight in the gym. You were renting a room from somebody else, right? You were investing in your future. And I'm over here screaming, just let me, you could pay me back even. Like, just let me help. Let me pay your rent. Let me do these things. And you refused at every single turn, you know, and it just speaks so much to your character, of what you were doing. And I was on the phone with you some night, and you were working overnight at the gym. And then you were getting up in the next day when I'm telling you, here's what you got to do. You got to make these phone calls. You got to do these things that are opposite of your personality, right? Like selling and making phone calls and reaching out and doing all that kind of stuff. Was that you were doing the right hard work, and you were putting in the time overnight working so that you could pay your rent on some shitty little room. And
it was good.
It was a nice room, but it was a shitty.
What I needed. Well, to your standards, yes. But it was just so many blessings through it. My landlord, who was also like a roommate, she's freaking amazing. So it was one of the first. I had just moved down to Charleston. I had no friends except my sister's down here, her husband, and they had just had a baby. So I'd babysit during the day, do this work, build my company, and then work overnight. So I'd sleep for a half hour in the parking lot between the time I was finished work and start babysitting. Then I'd, take another nap right before I'd start work again and work overnights. And I just kept saying, this is where the winners win. This is where the grit you need to win is here. And if you drop out now, you will never be able to look yourself in the mirror. And so I just kept saying, I got to push. And you're right. You tried to support me the whole time, but I never would have been able to live with myself if I had accepted money. And some people have, there's different circumstances for different people. But for me, everything lined up the way it was supposed to be. And it made me who I am, my childhood, my upbringing, everything led me to this point. So it was, and now I'm here and I'm happy, and I have whole new types of challenges,
but there's a step in between, which was you were going through all of that. You were working overnight at the gym, cleaning toilets, cleaning up after these pigs, and doing, and living in that room and doing the things that you were doing, and doing the right hard work. And then you got your opportunity and you stepped on stage and you were able to close over $500,000 in one setting, right? In one setting. Your life switched. And I want it, because I want people to understand, this is not about Emily. It's not about me. It's about you that are watching or listening to this on the replay, that this is the work that it takes for you to be able to be successful. The sustained time frame that you stick things together, the hard work, the sacrifice, the things that nobody is ever going to know about in public, that it seemingly changes in one moment. But it was a series of you doing the right things, putting in the hard work, sacrificing, not going out to the bars, not doing the things again, and not that it was a weakness, but for me, like not accepting the help from me, and those kinds of things that stack together to one moment when your life shows up. Everybody watching this has had that same moment, is that when you step up and you have your moment in time, are you prepared? Right? Are you prepared? And I remember working with you on your presentation and how you were going to approach it and the words you were going to say. And then you stepped up on that stage, and you're young, like, comparatively in that industry and the people that are working in there, you're young. And so you have to work, and you're a woman, right? And you have light skin, and you have all these things going against you that are where people are like, why would I trust this young girl? Right? I mean, I say that not how I feel about you, but how the world might view you, is that why would I trust this young girl? And you stepped up on that stage and you delivered at a level that was higher than your peers. There was higher than other people that were in the industry. And now people seek you out because of that certainty, because of that education, because of that hard work, because you decided that you were going to be the person that could answer the questions in a confusing world of, you know, all these licenses and marijuana, and there are people opening states and cannabis and CBD and all this kind of stuff. And you stepped on that stage and you shone so brightly that people delivered their belief to you in the form of written checks of over $500,000. One setting, right? One setting. And that was more than you'd made in your entire law career, more than you'd made in your illustrious career of scrubbing toilets. All of them combined, you made that in what seemed like was one 45-minute presentation.
You're absolutely right. It was a culmination. It was a series of everything that I had done to prepare for, including all the failures and all the mistakes, because I couldn't have been, and that's coming from someone who's very hard on herself, but understanding the absolute necessity of mistakes and failures and mess ups. Like, so I think for people, sure, we all go through those points where we have a life-changing moment, but there are a series of moments like that. So if you've already screwed up on one, or you missed the boat on one, or you didn't jump when you should have jumped, you hesitated, you stutter stepped, to me, that's just an opportunity to learn from it and then gear up. You know, like, I think there's a quote. He basically says, you know, whatever happens to you is good. And any setback you get, you can take that moment to reload, recalibrate, refocus, and be prepared for the next one. And that's, I think, a really great lesson in life, because we all screw up. I mean, that's the whole misfit motto, but we all use those mistakes to make the better decision the next time. So that's exactly what I did. And it was a very life-changing moment, but it was a very life-changing series of moments and years that brought me to that.
Yeah. And more than anything, it's just a life lesson for all of us. I mean, it's how my career progressed. I struggled in a time when everybody thought that I should be wiped off the face of the planet. I went bankrupt 3 times in a row, got divorced, all of this stuff that people want to try to put a pin in you, right? They want to say the decisions that you're making are stupid. And at the end of the day, it's up to the individual. You have always followed that true north, right? You've always followed the true north of what you see is possible for you. And I admire that so much. Of all the traits that you have, all the great traits that you have, is that you are constantly in service, right? You're constantly in service of other people. You're right in the middle of a big giant round. We have this thing called Unstoppable, and you're supporting me. You're supporting the attendees. You're asking if everybody's okay. Like, this is a big awareness for people to understand that you will be successful in life if you have determined first to be a servant, right? If you've determined first to be a servant, and nobody else has to understand your vision. Nobody else has to understand your sacrifice. Nobody else has to understand the work that you put in. Nobody has to understand that except for you. And each and every person that's watching this or listening to it on replay, or whatever your scenario, I want you to hear that, is that whatever that is that's in your heart, you stick to it long enough, because that's what you're meant to do. No matter how many people are telling you that you're silly, no matter how many people are telling you that you're not prepared for it, that it's not right, that you've got something good going on right now, why would you leave it, right? Or you've tried before and you fell on your face, why would you try this? It's that constant, never-ending decision that if something was put on your heart, it was put there by God, by the universe, by whatever it is that you believe, and that you've correspondingly been given the tools to pick up along the path of your journey towards your destiny.
That's absolutely it. And I know for me, I tend to get in my head about a lot of things, which I know you know that. It's almost constant. But I can dissect something until I literally destroy it. So for me, the way I know is, like, I know that the Lord puts certain passions and he instills certain things in us, skills and passions and joys. And so I knew the things that were still pulling at my heart And there was a calmness and a serenity and a peace around those things, despite all of the craziness going on in my head. That's how I can always tell something is the right thing for me to do. And I'm, you know, and in prayer and just giving that to the Lord, it was something that I was always able, the biggest decisions in my life, I've been usually making an instant, because I'm so in my heart that I can't let my head in. And but I think that's a great point. And it kind of brought up another point for me too. We tend to think everyone's like, not everyone, but there's a lot of haters in our lives, right? People who don't support us, people who are constantly, you know, retracting from what you're trying to pursue. But I would argue that those people, for the most part, are not necessarily haters, but maybe they're not at the place you're at yet. They feel love for you and they want to support you in the security bubble that they know how. And that's the best that they can love you at that point. Or someone who is battling their own, you know, their own passion that they want to jump into, but they've locked themselves down and they've chained themselves down. And so they are pushing those fears onto you. But I don't think they're haters. I just think they're people that we should look at and say, I have an opportunity to help hold my hand out and help that person, you know, take a jump and burn their own boats. You know, I'll hold the match, you know, I'll give it to you and you light it, you know. But I don't see people as like haters or detractors. I see them as people who either just don't get it. They are maybe a different generation who see a different type of love and a protection for people, or they haven't gotten to that point on their own. But there's an opportunity in all of them, you know?
Yeah, you and Pastor Rudy. You and Pastor Rudy have all that forgiveness shit down. I'm not so good at it, but and I like it and I love it. I respect it. I'm obviously on my own journey. I feel like, you know, some people that are haters need to look into their own life and look in the mirror. And that's that's where they're afraid, is that when they look in the mirror, they don't like the reflection of themselves. And so they try to tear other people down, or they try to make judgment of other people, because they're so broken hearted, right? Not broken as an individual, because I don't think there is such a thing, but they're so broken hearted about what they have sacrificed of their own destiny, right? And that's where people like you that step out and actually that actually follow their dreams. And yes, you've fallen, and yes, there was a lot of opportunity for people to tear you apart along the way, because you're like, you left a high paying, very prestigious job at a law firm, being an attorney, and now you're cleaning toilets from midnight to 4 o'clock in the morning. What is wrong with you, right?
10 p.m. to 6 a.m. Just to
Whatever.
clarify.
You
There's
know,
an extra
yeah.
couple hours in there that count for my.
I only talked to you between 12 and 4. So, you know, that was the only time you're working, actually. Okay. So, so you have that forgiveness. Pastor Rudy has that forgiveness. You know, Lori Gonzalez, who's on here and says, hi guys, love you. You know, that woman is just pure light, like just pure love all the time, laughing and giggling. And so again, I'll get there at some point.
No one's rushing you.
Yeah, nobody's rushing me. But at the end of the day, I feel like people should look themselves in the mirror and say, why do I even have the capacity? I mean, I watch you all the time. I've never known you to hate somebody, right? I've never seen Pastor Rudy hate somebody. I've never seen Lori hate somebody. I've never seen Ed Sullivan, right? Ed Sullivan doesn't hate anybody. Like all the people that I respect, and I don't hate people, but I get really, really angry at the idea that they would try to tear somebody else's journey down because this hasn't worked out for them, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's been people who make me very angry, very angry. And they have literally brought me to my knees where I'm like, what is it in me that's getting triggered here? And I hate the word triggered, but it literally is getting triggered. So I'll use it.
Well, that's a millennial word.
It is.
You're forgiven.
Welcome. You're welcome here. It's a safe space. But with the other snowflakes. Yeah, I think it's what I have seen, and I hate that I'm saying it because it's confronting other things in me too. But what is it in me that's feeling vulnerable by what those people are doing or saying? And usually it comes back to, how am I establishing my self-worth? because if that person is getting to me, it's usually a self-worth issue for me. And it kind of just pivots that I can't be angry at them because they're dealing with something and that's their way of dealing. It's not right. It's not excusable, but it's a shield. They're trying to protect a vulnerable spot in them, and it's hurting my vulnerable spot. So if I can be in prayer, if I can work on myself, then I can stand up and be a shield for them and carry on in the trenches while they're dealing with their thing. I mean, that's what, to me, what Christianity is all about. You're fighting shield to shield with someone. And when
Lori
they're
Gonzalez
down,
just said a surprising thing. She said, "Who's tearing you down? I'll send Rudy."
she's sending the warrior.
She's,
No, I just think
she's not somebody I would want to ever mess with, by the way.
that whole family's lethal and I love it. But yeah, I just think it's one of those things where we have an opportunity to be, that's when it's hardest to love, but that's the beauty of love. It's not this fluffy, stupid Hallmark movie type of thing. It's not the Bachelor or Bachelorette or whatever's on. It's the dirty stuff. It's the stuff where you are fighting when someone hurts you and you still love them. Like, that's crazy radical love. So
yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. So talk a little bit about, talk a little bit about your faith, because it's something that I've observed from you. It's something that I respect. Talk a little bit about where that came from and why it's important in your life.
Well, I grew up in a Christian home, and throughout my childhood, we bounced from church to church trying to find one that fit. There's so many fake churches out there and fake people. And I think my whole family was always repulsed by it because we're like, we don't really have anything to brag about, so we can't really fit in here, and my brother, sister, and I, we would, try to get in these small groups at these new churches, and we felt like outcasts, and it was just one of these things where I think none of us were happy. And then we found this one church in Pittsburgh called Tetelestai Church, and Tetelestai is Greek for "it is finished," which are the words that Christ said on the cross. And it was the most non-judgmental, loving people I'd ever come. And it was right at a time in my life, I was around 15, 16, and I needed it. My life was just kind of going here. And that's a whole other story, but my life was tanking. And I was going to this church where all these people are just like, we love you. Like, it's cool. They weren't trying to shove anything down my throat. They weren't trying to preach to me. They weren't trying to put hands, nothing. And this guy, Ron Hale, and his wife, Carol, they'd sit across from me. It was like at a school, and they just loved me. If I came because I was up all night drinking or whatever, and I'd always be sick because I was never taking care of myself. I was, out, and they'd have cough drops and tissues for me because they just wanted to take care of me. And they never said anything to me, nothing. 3 years later, Ron came up to me and he said, "The Lord's been telling me to tell you this. You're so loved. And the Lord made you twin." He said these things that just brought me to tears, rocked my life. Okay. The only reason why I'm crying is because I'm Italian, and Jimmy V said, if you're not laughing, crying, and hugging all in the same day, or if you do those three things, you've lived a full life that day. So this is my day. Okay. Everybody, let me have it. But yeah, so he just brought me to tears because he just loved me. And that was it. He said, "I know it's weird. I don't know you. I don't care if you like me. I don't know you from Adam. But here it is." And I just started weeping. And I just would bring notebooks to this church, and I'd be listening to my pastor, and he was just saying all these things that blew my mind. And I was like, there's a group of people out here that love me. They don't even ask me. They don't even care that I'm such a screw up. I have a home, so it was just so cool. And I spent 5 years or something just writing notes, and I'd stay after and I'd be like, "Pastor Knapp, I know you don't know me, but look at all these, I have so many questions, sit and just answer my questions." And he'd sit there for 3 hours, and all these guys and women that I didn't know. And I was so young and so stupid. I had just the dumbest questions, right? But I was so curious. I was just so thirsty to know it. And it was just all love. And it just radically transformed my life. But it was never something where Christians are always once you love the Lord, once you're a Christian, your life changes completely. It was never like that. I was still going out. I was still doing stupid shit. But my heart wasn't satisfied anymore. And then I'd go to church and I finally felt love. And all the things I was looking for in guys and drinking, that I could never get in that guy and I could never get in that alcohol, I got at this church. And it wasn't the church, it wasn't the building or anything, it was the people. And so, you know, and I still keep in touch with all of them, even though I don't live in Pittsburgh anymore. But then you've got this group like the Misfits, you know, and you've got the group like the Gonzaleses. They love, it's a radical kind of love. They don't, you know, and I think that's the thing. And that's why I love my brother, sister, and I were all on that journey at the same time. And he healed so much of our brokenness. And it's just one of those things where I look at it and I'm like, man, if I could only, I don't know, if I could only just help people see that the bullshit Christianity that's out there is not real. That's not Christianity. That's not faith. They wouldn't even accept Jesus. Like, they wouldn't even accept Jesus in their church. They would probably turn him away. And so it's the biggest misfits that are usually the ones that reflect Christ the most. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm sorry for crying so much. I don't know what it is, but I don't know. And I don't know if it's the wine or.
No, you're good. It's not the wine. It's who you are, and it's fine. Like, you know, the thing. I mean, you mentioned Pastor Rudy. So many people don't know this. I've never spoken about this, but I became, you know, I went through. There was a big men's movement back in the day, and it was called Promise Keepers. And, you know, and that was the first time, like I was saved, you know, was at a great big stadium in San Diego. And I had the weirdest, experience, you know, while I was there. And it was a friend of mine, this guy named Paul, like, you know, just like in the Bible, right? He was just this giant of a man, and he'd been hammering me for like 3 years to go. And so I ended up going, you know, we went across the country and you know, and I ended up getting saved there. And then my marriage fell apart. Like all of these things kind of like, you know, fell apart, and my business fell apart, and I ended up homeless. And, you know, some of the people that I had helped make tons of money for, I would reach out just to say, I haven't eaten in 3 days. Can you guys like Western Union me $10 so I can go get a burrito or some shit, right? And all these people who purported to be Christians, were turning their back, literally turning their back on me. And so I got a bad taste in my mouth about Christianity. I got a bad taste in my mouth about, because I'm like, it talks about love. It talks about all this kind of stuff. I've given the shirt off of my fucking back for people. You know what I mean? And here I am in my time in need. And I was pissed, and I got pissed at God, and I got pissed at Jesus, and I got pissed at religion, and I got pissed at the Christian church. And I was so mad at everybody, you know, and part of the journey for me was I was looking in one direction and not realizing that even in that moment, like the birds in the trees, I was being fed, right? I was going to homeless shelters and they fed me. There was complete strangers that didn't even know I was homeless because I was trying to hold up the facade, right? That would give me $10. There was a restaurant there in Southern California that would feed me. And now you got me crying. And it's not the wine. But at the end of the day, it was I was still being loved. I was still being taken care of. I was still provided for, you know, in that journey. But I didn't realize to be grateful, because I was thinking to myself, I had this version of me who I thought I was supposed to be. And it wasn't, there was no, like, I was a loser. I had fucking lost. It was my third bankruptcy. I had cheated on my wife. My marriage had ended. I had 2 daughters that were without a father figure in the home. Like everything that I thought I was had completely tanked and failed. And so for years, I just rejected religion at every level. Like, I just thought, this is a bunch of bullshit. These people go and they pat each other on the back and they're fucking full of shit, And it took Pastor Rudy and you at the same time for me to watch what the church is really about. You know what I mean? And I love that. I love that I've seen that it's pure forgiveness all the time, which pisses me off still to this day,
Well, I think that's the thing that's what pisses off majority of modern day Christians, is that radical forgiveness means you have to forgive even the people you have pushed to the outside. That includes rapists, that includes murderers, that includes people that we have outcasted, that the Lord just says, I know you're not there yet, but when I see how undeserving of love I am, but yet the Lord is saying, you are so deserving of my love. That's why I made you. You're in my essence, and I am love. I'm the embodiment of it. I look at people who are broken and what their actions are doing are, quite honestly, I mean, most of the time, at least from my perspective, it's a reflection of what they see on the inside, and they're broken. They're hurting. They're coming from generations of brokenness, of not that they are broken, like you're saying, but people are fallible, and there are generational things that happen, and the consequences of that are dark. But you've got a God who said, I'm here to rip that darkness apart. And like Pastor Rudy was saying, and Dom Fawcett was saying, it's a powerful, fierce, chaotic, just like a love that just shreds darkness. And it's a forgiveness. And I think that's what you're seeing.
Well, and I saw that it took Pastor Rudy, somebody that is again, it's not just a respect thing, but it's a guy that, because I mean, my upbringing and the gangbanging and the drug dealing and the beating people up for a living and all the stuff it took somebody as dangerous, right? He loves that word, right? It took somebody as dangerous as Pastor Rudy to show up and go, look, this is, and he doesn't say it. Like, this is the other thing. He doesn't run around like pounding his chest, I'm a Christian, right? He's a pastor. And when he's doing what he's doing and rescuing little girls and rescuing little boys, and he's putting his life on the line for the things that he does with certain ministries, is that he's not beating it into people, right? It's the, I can't even talk about it, because the little girl that was in the back seat of this pickup truck that we rescued during the big search, and she's got Maddie loving on her, and she's got this big Mike who's giant, standing there at guard in the freezing cold, and you've got Lori, Pastor Rudy's wife, that made this amazing personalized Bible, and they're sitting in the back of this truck, and Pastor Rudy gets to look at this little girl whose adopted father abused her, who every man in her life had abused her. And to be able to turn around in that truck and to be able to say, I apologize to you on behalf of all men that have damaged you. And still be strong enough to be able to go out and crash doors with me, and to be at 3:00 in the morning sweeping abandoned fucking hotels, and to see that he's a rough man, willing, capable, and able to be able to demonstrate violence in the moment, but love in the next. And that violence actually being generated from love, right? And for Dom Fawcett, who has shamed himself for the violence of love in his life, to be able to be forgiven, and in that moment to be able to see that, right? It's fucking magic. So
I love it too. That point you made about Pastor Rudy is an example of someone who never sacrifices masculinity because he's a Christian. And people oftentimes, I think that's its own epidemic among Christians, is that the men think they can't be men. because they're Christians, and that's not true. It just exemplifies or magnifies, I should say, or amplifies what men should be. And it's servant leaders, it's warriors, they're strong, fierce, fighting men. And there's so many examples in that in the Bible of like the God moving through big things that are just life-changing, altering things. And sometimes he comes, very, very peacefully and quietly, but sometimes he freaking roars when he moves in. And just, that's what I love about you. Your character has been steady since I met you. You have been open about your flaws. You've been open about your growth. I've seen you make huge changes to better your life and to better our relationship. I've seen you admit and see things where you still have to grow. And it's allowed you to be open for this moment when you met Pastor Rudy and his family. And you could say, this is the people I want to connect with. And you never held your past against them, of what you saw in flawed humanity and Christianity against them. So I just think that's amazing. You always amaze me. I feel like we're just talking on FaceTime. Like I have no idea.
I feel like this is kind of our conversations.
It is. It is. It's like my normal time. You kind of like bring me to tears because we get some such in-depth conversations, like heart talk, and like.
Yeah. So I don't know why we ended up going down this direction, but
I don't know. I literally thought you had me on here to talk about coronavirus. So I'm really happy we didn't talk about it because I know nothing.
No, fuck that. Here's the thing.
I know nothing about it.
Yeah. I mean, for coronavirus, like, at the end of the day, the reason why I'm doing this is called CTFD, right? Calm the fuck down. This is the series of talks that I'm going to do. I'm going to bring Danelle on. I'm going to bring Dr. V on. I'm going to bring all the unstoppable speakers in here. And I've got a world-renowned person in that's an expert in infectious disease and its spread and all that kind of stuff. Been doing it for 40 years. I'm gonna bring him in next week. But at the end of the day, I'm not like the idea here is that coronavirus is just another thing that's going to pop up in our lives as something that is a challenge, right? And
what was that C.S. Lewis quote we were talking about last night?
I think you texted it to me, but since then you've texted me 152 times. So
probably 500 times. Yeah, but he basically said, he was asked about it was in World War II, and they said, they were asking, a reporter was asking C.S. Lewis, and they said, what would you do? And I saw it on a friend of mine, Mr. Van Eerden's Facebook page, but an interviewer asked C.S. Lewis and said, what would you do if you saw an atomic bomb being dropped on England? And he said, I would look up at the sky, I would look at that bomb coming down on me, and I would say, you are a mere bomb. I am an immortal soul. And that's just so powerful. Something like that. Probably botched the whole quote, but it was very powerful. And it doesn't mean we can't prepare, but it does mean here I'm giving advice to people.
Well, it's worth the time. It's worth the time. I found it. But it says, essentially, whenever you hear the word atomic bomb in this essay, think coronavirus, right? And it says, yeah. So when we think a great deal too much of the atom bomb, coronavirus, Lewis begins, to those who wonder how it's possible to go on in the face of such a threat, Lewis recalls that theirs was not the first generation to live under a threatening shadow. In fact, if we're honest, we all live under a sentence of death. And for some of us, that death could even be unpleasant. The important question, says Lewis, is not whether or how we will die, but in the meantime, how we will be doing sensible and human things like praying, working, reading, listening to music, and bathing children. Lewis asks his leaders to consider the important but unsettling truth that nature does not, in the long run, favor life. Nature does not, in the long run, favor life. It's an ominous observation that points to an essential worldview truth. If nature is all that exists, in other words, if there is no God and no life of some quite different sort somewhere outside of nature, then all the stories, quote, will end in the same way, in a universe from which all life is banished without the hope of return. How do we respond to this unsettling truth? Lewis saw only three options. The first is suicide. Something is not uncommon in Britain in the 1940s and 50s. The second, simply to have a good time, as good as time as possible. The universe is a universe of nonsense, but since you're here, grab what you can. And of course, as Lewis noted, there is, on these terms, so very little left to grab. Only the corset, sensual pleasures. Whether we're talking about sex or listening to music, the pleasure is diminished by the knowledge that any enjoyment we might derive are merely illusions, the product of irrational conditioning determined by our genes. The third response, Lewis said, is to go down fighting. Stay dangerous, as Pastor Rudy would say, right? Go down fighting, to live as if the universe has meaning. We can insist on being rational and merciful, even when the universe is not. Of course, if we choose that option, there's no way to actually prevail against the idiocy of the universe. It would still win. Our insistence on being rational and merciful has no real justification. The hopelessness of those three options should instead lead us to a different conclusion. We must simply accept, said Lewis, that we are spirits, free and rational beings at present inhabiting an irrational universe, and must draw the conclusion that we are not derived from it. So powerful, like powerful,
so good,
powerful.
so good. Provides meaning to uncertainty.
That's right. And I think that that's what Misfits stand for. You know, we've been going way too long, but you know, at the end of the day, I think that's what Misfits stand for, right? I mean, that last sentence where he says, we are spirits, free and rational beings at present inhabiting an irrational universe. 100% the coronavirus universe right now. It is completely irrational. It is completely, we're going to get to the other side of it. There's an end to it. It's not, you know, my favorite meme that keeps going around, that at the end of the day, that it's not, what's that disease that kills everybody? It's, anyway, so it's not.
It's your favorite meme.
Yeah, it's my favorite meme and I've forgotten it. We're completely off on left channel here. But leprosy, it's not leprosy, right? It's not leprosy. And at the end of the day, if I keep telling everybody that I use myself as an example. If I got coronavirus and I died from it, it's my time to go. You know what I mean? And for the last 10 years of my life, there's not a moment that I'm ashamed of. There's not a moment that I would do differently. There's not a moment that I would look back on and say that I have not lived my life. I have not tried. I have not sacrificed. I've not given. I've not loved. I've not cared. I've not donated. I've not done the things. There's not a minute of my last 10 years that I would be ashamed of. Lots of them before that I would be ashamed of. But to your point, to Pastor Rudy's point, to Lori's point, to Maddie's point, to Cece's point, to everybody's point, is that we're forgiven. You know, we're forgiven at the moment that we forgive ourselves, because we've already been forgiven, and we carry around this illusion that we're not.
Yeah. And I think that allows us to have a lot more empathy and understanding for people's reactions to this. Everyone is ranging on the scale of interaction in the coronavirus, but we're all kind of a little, right. We don't know fully everything, but I think at the end of the day, we can all recognize that everyone just is having a different response, but everyone at the end of the day doesn't want someone else to die. They want to be okay. They just have different understandings of what is happening. And then we learn from it. You know, we can analyze and I know this firsthand because of the stage 3 hurricane that I did not leave South Carolina for, and learned that one. And I just remember thinking, this might be it. Like, I was in a bathtub with an ironing board over top of me in case the roof collapsed. And I thought, you know, because all the power things were popping and it sounded like explosions. I'd never been in a hurricane. It bumped from a stage 2 to stage 3. And I kept thinking, I have lived such a freaking good life. I have learned so much. I wouldn't take any of it back. And I'm going home to the Lord. Like, I'm okay. I was so good, which was awesome, because now I know when I would actually be like in a death situation. So that's good.
I
But
would have been pissed, however.
I know, because I know I didn't leave. I should have, but I learned. And
No,
that's
I mean, I would have been pissed if you would have been taken from me. So.
oh, gotcha. But thank you. I get that. But I also learned how to better prepare for the next situation. So in this situation, I'm not freaking out. I'm not panicking, but I'm prepared, you know, and
You also have a prepper for a boyfriend.
I do not have a pink 9mm handgun. So let's just throw that out there now. I would never.
Not never, because your birthday's coming up, and it
No,
might have been
I posted a picture of a very white Chris Vector rifle under that post that you did today. That's the hint for my Christmas or my birthday.
Great. So now I have to trade it in amongst a panic of other people buying weapons. Great.
No one's gonna buy the Chris Vector.
Take my pink 9mm back, because she didn't like it very much.
That's like a guy shopping for tampons. That's literally that's the gun equivalent. Yeah. Hey, my girlfriend just needed a 922. Crazy.
Fine, I'll take it back. You're very, very, very ungrateful, by the way. You're just demonstrating that to the rest of the world. You know.
I'm sorry. I'm grateful. If you got from me, I'm grateful.
That's awesome. So, cool. You can shoot. You're a Christian. You own a business that's in the cannabis space. You are a walking dichotomy, and that's really why I wanted everybody to get to know you tonight. So so as people, and the other side of this is I've kind of like looked at myself as, on one side, I'm Rambo for you, for my family, for my kids, for the people that I love. And on the other hand, I'm Bob Hope, because Bob Hope, the one thing that he could bring to the troops and to the world at that period of time when there was so much uncertainty was laughter, and was another perspective, and was to shift their life. Right. So what would you tell people during this time of crisis? You know, I say crisis because I think it's one of two things. It's going to be a depression, or it's going to be over in a very short amount of time. Right. Which is great, because if it is over in a short amount of time, you all know you better prepare for when the real thing happens, right? Which I've been doing for 10 years. My mom always called me crazy, called me the other day and said, I'm glad you're not so crazy anymore. So what advice would you give to everybody as they're navigating what we're going through right now?
I don't know if I'm the one to give advice, but I think something I'm learning, I should say, that I could share is, you know, social media, the news, they tend to get clips of the most crazy things, negative things happening. So you see these clips of people fighting over toilet paper, and that's such a small portion, like a small portion of the population. If you would walk out to the Walmart where I live, like people were in an orderly line, handing toilet paper to the person behind them. My sister, who has a baby, she was in Trader Joe's, and a guy was running to the wipes, and she thought he was taking them before her, but he ran to get them so he could give them to her so they wouldn't run out. So it's like that Mr. Rogers quote, look for the people helping, right? Or look for the helpers. And I think that's it. It's all around us. So maybe if you can spot that, if you can be the person who's willing to get some groceries for someone around you that is a little afraid to go into the stores, do that, you know, and maybe, I don't know, I see a lot of posts on Facebook. I see a lot of memes. It's getting really, it's like, I feel like I'm in around the time where people are voting for president and everyone's like voting, like talking about politics. It's like coronavirus right now. So I don't know, to me, it's less social media, less what's trying to get clicks and likes and shares. And it's more just look for the good, look for people helping, because that's humanity shining right now. And we have an opportunity to spot it and train. I'm trying to train myself to see the good in humanity, because it's all around, but it's what I choose to focus on. Right. And it's our choice.
100%.
Whether it's just a flu or a pandemic, that outcome's the same. People are helping. Just look at them.
It's the same. And you see, you know, you look to the Italians where everybody's like, look at how bad it is in Italy. And you have a world famous opera singer on his porch performing like he's at the Met or wherever, you know, like and he's giving his best, radically best performance on his porch to his neighbors.
Mm.
And that's what I want to reach out to Misfit Nation is, doesn't matter if you have the voice of an opera singer, whether you have $1 million, you have a gift, and your gift needs to be being delivered to those around you, right? You need to give that right now, whether this is a short-term blown out of proportion thing, or whether it's the depression that everybody, that it could possibly be. No matter what it is, right? It's an opportunity for you to shine with your humanity, and to not fall back into the weakness, and to not fall back into the it's all about me, and it's all about mine, and I got me, and blah 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 blah. It's a time to step forward, and for you to love, and for you to sacrifice, and for you to put yourself in environments where you might feel uncomfortable, but for us to do the best that we can for those people that are near us, even if we don't identify them, even if we've never met them. You know what I mean? Like Big Mike and Pastor Rudy and Lori and Cece and Maddie and everybody on the CERT Ministries team who risked their lives for people who may never know who they were, right? That's the kind of love that's going to get us through this. That's the kind of caring that's going to get us over this hump, is being the best us that we can possibly be, and loving at the highest level that we can. And so I want to kind of bring it to a close with just a high level of respect for you. I love you, and the world now knows why I love you that don't know you, but I'm so grateful to have you in my life. You've been nothing but a blessing. And anybody that gets to know you, your company, the service that they can do, your passion for single moms, the work that you do, the donations that you give to certain ministries, the donations for Feed a Billion, for A New Dawn, for all of the things that you do, and more importantly, the work that you do behind the scenes, dealing with me, is a big
My
deal.
pleasure. I enjoy that.
It's a lot. And it's not always the glory and the shining lights. There's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes, and your heart is giant, and I love you.
Thank you. I love you too.
Thanks for being here. Thanks for being on the show. And anybody that needs anything in cannabis, here's your girl. I don't know what else to say.
I literally feel like we're FaceTiming, so I'm just going to be like,
it's just been kind of a conversation.
It has. I can't see any comments. I'm locked in quarantine in the Zoom call.
Well, Lori says, love you both. Rayanne says, love both of you. Heather Dye says, aw. John Duffy says, thanks, Emily and Jason, for a great show. Todd Hart. We love you, Todd Hart. Love you, brother. So anyway, lots of people said lots of stuff. You can go and respond to it later.
You could literally caption this live. We cried a lot.
No, you cried a lot. I didn't cry at all. It's seasonal allergy time, and I think Corona makes your eyes leak.
That's it.
All right. Well, I will talk to you in 5 minutes on FaceTime. and you have a good evening. Love you.
Bye.
Peace.